ParkerSchnabel adventure will surprise you, because he has already made 24. He now pays his employees more than doctors do in a year, with $13 million in gold. And has vehicles that are more valuable than most people's homes, yet Gold Rush cameras don't capture the extravagant cars, the crazy Vegas excursions, and the let's delve into TV's private realm to find out the true reason his girlfriend left him. ParkerSchnabel, the richest young star, was 5 years old when he was born, and he didn't grow up like most children. At his grandfather's mine in Honus, Alaska, he operated heavy machinery for the first time. The location was known as Big Nugget Mine, was a genuine functioning gold mine, not a playground. Parker and I weren't merely there to observe his grandfather, John Schnabel. Felt that educating was important, thus Parker was learning how to accomplish this instead of using toy trucks. Handle actual ones while he was operating loaders and dozers. The majority of children were still learning how to use training wheels at that time. Influenced everything. Hanses is a tiny hamlet with 1,700 residents that is bordered by winters are long and summers are short in the outdoors and in life. Growing up in that setting taught Parker how to work hard, since you have to mend things yourself when they break. There wasn't much space for indolence while other children were about, so think quickly and remain concentrated. Parker was learning how to shovel dirt, manage crews, and comprehend the worth of gold while playing video games. When Parker was 16, his grandfather's health began to deteriorate. Unfortunately, John Schnabel was more than just a member of the family. He was also a mentor and an icon in the mining industry when John died in March at the age of 96. Parker was personally burdened by the family business on the 18th of 2016, as he had previously been assisting in the operation of Big Nugget Mine, but he was now completely in command. It was, and losing his grandfather was a difficult time emotionally, taking up all of his time. It was made more difficult by the fact that Parker had surgery at such a young age, but he refused to give up. After assuming command and ensuring the mine remained alive, he made the choice that astonished everyone by doing his whole college course instead of enrolling in school. Spend $663,000 to purchase mine's equipment. It was a deliberate move, and he had faith in what he was doing, and he was prepared to stake everything on the idea that money would enable him to grow his business and increase productivity. And extract more gold than ever before. It was risky, but eventually it proved successful. That ParkerSchnabel was barely 16 when he took over, yet his investment ended up becoming millions. He was young, quiet, and unknown when he first appeared in front of the cameras. Gold Rush's producers had serious worries about whether he was the perfect fit. It didn't seem like a plot that could last an entire season with a teenager in charge of a mining team, but then they saw in action. Parker had been raised on Alaska's large nugget mine. Since he could walk, his grandfather John Schnabel had taught him everything. He wasn't just a youngster with a well-known last name, he could discuss strategy and knew how to handle equipment. He was aware of the dangers when the crew observed him demonstrate how to operate a mine during his initial audition. From beginning to end, without a script or coaching, it was more than most adults they had witnessed, and what truly advanced things was how organically he handled machinery at the age of 16, using steady hands to operate large machinery, and he was aware of each component, explained how to use it, when to replace it, and potential problems. Wasn't guessing that he was working. Books don't teach that type of skill. Originates from the ground, thus the producers decided to take a chance and sign him. When Parker initially joined on, that risk paid off, as he secured a for someone so young. The $25,000 per episode arrangement was unexpected, but he wasn't merely passing the time on his screen. He was running actual operations and making choices that may save or cost millions. As the program expanded and the Parker's value quickly increased as the audience followed his adventure, And eventually he was. Despite earning up to $100,000 per episode, Parker didn't begin to live like rather from purchasing ostentatious automobiles or enormous homes. A celebrity dedicated his money toward those in his immediate vicinity go hunting, travel with his crew, and he once stated that he would prefer spend more time on memories than on things that changed his perspective and made him unique. Filming was a difficult task, grounded in a way that distinguished out in reality TV. Every Gold Rush season required months of planning, including filming and editing for Parker, which required him to spend the majority of his time on location on camera, and Parker was under pressure, whilst other teenagers were preoccupied with their studies or athletics. Directing extensive mining activities in the central Yukon, ParkerSchnabel was in his early 20s when he executed one of the most spectacular gold hauls in contemporary mining. In the Klondike, a region renowned for its harsh climate, rough terrain, and gold, seldom simple to locate, but one season Parker and his team were able to unearth at the time, $1,029 worth of gold was worth more than $1.7 million. It wasn't simply a personal victory for someone his age, it altered the perception of him throughout the mining community. In that haul wasn't accidental. Parker had to carefully consider each move he made while leading a full team, managing wash plants, maintaining continuous machine operation, and everything. It was difficult working under the strict schedule of a brief mining season, but he managed to keep things going despite the pressure. Breaks a lot of people. Parker showed that he didn't simply survive but also dominated, which made the timing was even more potent because most people his age were seated in, whether attending college lectures or attempting to get their first job. Parker was out in the cold extracting almost $1 million from the earth. That 1,029 haul was more than just gold. It was evidence that he recognized the danger and the grind more effectively than most people twice his age, and this accomplishment turned into a pivotal event that made Parker a key figure on gold and involved more than just large sums of money. Rush and demonstrated that he wasn't only fortunate, as viewers began to see he was becoming into a serious player, not just a young man with a shovel. That event set him on a different course, and all that followed began with Parker's move that season. Years later left even seasoned miners stunned, startled. He paid $15 million for Dominion Creek when he was just 28 years old. Dominion was renowned for its enormous gold potential, which may reach $200 million. Remains in the ground, but there were significant possibilities that Parker would lose money. To mine 10,000 ounces per season for 6 years, if that amount is missed, there will be a loss. Even though he put a lot of effort into the deal, the first for the freezing ground slowed his workers tremendously. They were only able to remove 135,000 in weeks. Everything that could go wrong seemed to slam them all at once when the equipment began to break, but Parker didn't fold. Instead, he changed improved equipment and even invested $540,000 on new water pumps that might. Every step was a chance as they moved 76 liters per minute to aid in the recovery of gold. However, he persisted in saying that the Dominion deal spoke highly of him. Even if he wasn't pursuing swift wins, he was constructing something durable, and he looked beyond the short-term losses and believed that most people would have a long-term reward. Backing off, Parker went Allen, but by early 2025, the pressure was still there. The circumstances at Dominion Creek were difficult. The expenses kept piling up and the figures weren't coming in as he had intended. Parker made another shift in February, in the midst of the season. Paid $2.50 for 2 additional claims, Gold Run and Sulphur Creek. Million was audacious, dangerous, and unexpected. These statements weren't random picks. Sulphur Creek and Gold Run had been mined for more than they only retained solid gold for 2 days out of 100 years. The workers withdrew into mining one of the cuts near Sulphur Creek. 141. 65-0 was the type of outcome they hadn't observed in all moving wash plants. Wasn't an easy decision, and season morale began to change. Moving machinery over 25 miles of rough terrain required a lot of work, and the team was some people thought it was fantastic, while others were concerned that Parker was getting into more debt, but he stayed. He claimed to be calm and that he had previously accepted the debt and was prepared to face regardless of whether it was a congrats or a remorse for the purchase. Became one of Gold Rush Season 15's most dramatic scenes, as it revealed even when it seemed like everything was going apart, Parker continued to take chances. Doubled down, reminding all onlookers that his achievement didn't come from that move. It resulted from making difficult decisions and accepting the consequences rather than playing it safe. If Parker hadn't already accomplished something that most miners could only imagine by the time he had extracted more than $13 million worth of gold from the ground by the time he reached 24. This type of figure is uncommon since most people are beginning their professions at that age. Parker had already begun his journey at his grandfather's large nugget mine, and he learned Alaska at a young age, and at the age of 18, he made the crucial choice to accept the money. It was intended to cover education expenses and utilized it to rent land from Tony Beats in the Klondike. That one action influenced he began assembling his own staff, managing his own website, and studying every aspect of the work, geology tools, and leadership. He didn't spend his money the way most young millionaires do, buying expensive homes and fancy automobiles instead. He expanded his enterprise to fresh territory, purchased better equipment, and concentrated on long-term development and made an effort to improve each season. ParkerSchnabel was only 18 when he walked, and his dedication was what kept him ahead. Moving to the Klondike from his family's large nugget mine in Alaska, he started a mining company using his college funds rather than using them to attend classes. Operation Tony Beats was the first person he went to. At the time, Tony was Parker, a mining legend already, needed ground to mine, and Tony having what he needed, they made a contract, and it was Parker's first significant action as a self-sufficient kid, although the agreement came with a cost. Tony recognized Parker's youth and lack of expertise, so he took complete benefit. The royalty system initially appeared straightforward. 15% off of the initial 1,500 ounces, but each following that, there was a 5% rise to 1,500 ounces. Parker didn't realize how awful things were until he reached 6,000, at which point he was paying 25%. The agreement lasted up until Season 8, when he had to cease mining at 6,000 in order to. In Season 9, Parker made it apparent how awful things had gotten. "We give Tony Beats 8,000 ounces, which is over $2 million, he remarked, and to be honest, I'd go broke doing that, and Tony's refusal to budge when Parker attempted to renegotiate drove Parker in an attempt to be inventive. He devised a scheme to always reset the royalty count. When his team's weight approached 1,500 ounces, they would swap wash plants. That Tony's inability to track the amount in a single line was a flaw, but it together, and then the time came when their private conflict became a public conflict. In Season 8, Tony discovered in March 2017 that Parker had been transferring soil from Tony observed another claim made through his grounds to avoid paying higher royalties. When he saw rock trucks slinking in his yard, he instantly turned everything off. In front of the cameras, they barged into Parker's business and unleashed. "You've been using rock trucks to sneak through the yard all week," Tony shouted. "According to the agreement, the only material you will use when renting the space from us is." Despite Tony's greed, sleaze Parker didn't back down and called him out. "Get over $1 million this year." Tony claimed that wasn't enough, so all you need to do is sit back and earn money. When Parker said, "Then you can go yourself," their dispute became one of the most explosive in the history of the gold rush, and their relationship continued to change as when the competition first began in Season 4, Tony served as a mentor, but by 2025, he saw Parker as a serious danger in the Season 13 opener. Tony leased Parker simply included the portion of his Indian River claim that he didn't desire. It was a tactful gesture of respect, but Tony seldom gave praise. He publicly made fun of Parker's strategy on January 28. He claimed that Parker was taking on more than he could handle in 2025 after witnessing his attempt to operate 3 wash plants concurrently, and he also chastised Parker for his short-term ambition, stating that he would pay for it later, and by early 2025, he wasn't totally mistaken. Just 9 weeks into the season, Parker owed $2.5 million while attempting to remove Dominion Creek, but Tony observed what Parker was doing in secret. He informed his son Kevin, according to industry sources, that Parker's gold recovery rates weren't something to chuckle about, even if Tony knew the child was good. ParkerSchnabel and Todd Hoffman's narrative is more than simply a competition, it's a full-fledged conflict between ambition, pride, and entirely distinct perspectives on managing a gold mine. It began with a transaction that should have been straightforward, but at the height of the drama of the show, it evolved into something that influenced Gold Rush's future. Todd sold Parker a wash plant for $700,000 of gold, which is about at the time, Todd believed he had made a wise decision by selling off $46,000. What he thought was a piece of useless equipment, but Parker had other ideas. Made it possible for that same wash plant to play a crucial role in his gold operation. The success he achieved from that alleged rubbish was a blow to Todd, who had misjudged Parker from the beginning, and this time it didn't just hurt. It grew. Parker's distance from Todd was growing, but Todd didn't remain silent. He said Parker was disrespectful, especially to senior people. Todd, a worker, stated in an interview that it was difficult to observe more seasoned crew members be rejected by a young person who portrayed Parker as conceited and irresponsible. For some who had been in the industry for a lot longer, this wasn't just a problem at work, it became a clash between generations. Todd represented tradition and experience, Parker symbolized results and change, and their dynamic divided the crowd, with some backing Todd, who valued loyalty and respect, thought Parker's focus and capacity to provide outcomes regardless of the circumstances. The tension between their teams erupted, and on multiple occasions, fights did break out. Full-on physical altercations on set weren't intended for at one time. A straightforward dispute over mining yields turned into a true drama. Turned into a crew fight with yelling charges of sabotage. Matches, things became so dire that the production crew had to intervene to prevent utterly disintegrating. It was not only uncomfortable to observe, but it was also depressing. Dropped viewers became aware of the increasing tension and began to question whether the show could continue in this manner by 2018. When things got out of hand, Todd Hoffman departed the show. Was more than simply business. His operation has been losing money for some time. Conversely, our low Parker was setting new records season after season. The analogy seemed unavoidable. Todd was continuously being measured against Parker, and the interviews suffered as a result of that strain. Following his departure, Todd acknowledged that the poisonous environment greatly influenced his choice, adding that reality his personal life and mental health were being negatively impacted by TV, therefore it wasn't worth it. No longer, even if he eventually made a comeback with a brand new show called Hoffman Family Gold. Gold Rush's departure signaled the conclusion of one of the most dramatic reality TV shows. Outside of the mines, ParkerSchnabel's own story was developing, and he met Ashley Yule, a veterinary nurse, in Australia in 2016. Provided a vibrant enthusiasm that was unaffected by the harsh realities of mining. Parker asked her to join him in the throughout their 2-year romance. Klondike wasn't merely a supporting character. She assisted the team Parker while working in the Gold Room, as she even stated in a 2017 Ashley didn't receive enough recognition for how well that summer went, according to the Maxim interview, yet despite all the success, their romance ended in the 8th season's finale episode following obtaining 8,400 ounces of gold valued at more than $10 million. Parker acknowledged he referred to the split with Ashley as one of his worst mistakes, saying he didn't make her a priority and that she was worthy of better, but Ashley never discussed it in public. Silently deleted Parker's presence from her social media accounts and went back to Australia. That quiet just highlighted Parker's remorse. Additionally, viewers discovered something Parker on August 13, 2018, a few months later. Shared a picture of herself with British TV personality Sheena Cowell. The image was produced by reality production company Knickerbocker Glory TV. Personal, and many began to speculate right once if she was his new girlfriend. Only a few months after Ashley's separation, the timing made everything seem even more strange, but neither of them verified that Sheena had prior expertise in the industry, which Parker had even told people that it looked like a nice fit for someone leading such an odd lifestyle. Magazine in 2024 that makes it seem as though he's from some sort of. When it was reported in 2019, the rumors about the dismal, mad world had subsided. That Sheena had a boyfriend before Tyler Mahoney arrived during the 2020 season. Trail Parker partnered with the fourth generation of Gold Rush Parkers. Both Australian gold prospectors had strong ties to the gold industry and were of the same age. Fans quickly recognized the chemistry between them on social media. Reddit was awash with hypotheses, and fans kept a careful eye on each of the 9 episodes searching for indications of a developing romance. The program itself didn't hold back. The editing emphasized their collaboration and mutual enthusiasm based on that notion. However, if nothing that occurred behind the scenes ever made it onto the screen, in contrast to Ashley, there was only mutual respect and no confirmed kiss. After purchasing acclaim in Australia, Good TV Parker left fans wondering if, as of 2023, Tyler would continue to play a significant role in his story. And although there has been no formal announcement as of 2024, the romance rumors have persisted. Although none of them has provided confirmation, it is evident that they get along well. Back in 2018, while Parker's Trail was being filmed in Papua New Guinea at first, things became tense between Parker and his cameraman James Lavelle. Collaborated effectively, but on July 12, things quickly became tense. Detonated when Parker pressed Lavelle to record a perilous river crossing. Back, but Lavelle continued rolling, and the ensuing yelling fight lasted for more than 3 hours. Hear them shouting more than 100 meters away, and near the end, Parker threatened to, in just 3 days, the entire project's Discovery executives had to step in. Lavelle was removed from the filming later on July 15. By that time, just 60% of the after prearranged material was shot, the production was thrown into disarray, and the Discovery spent roughly $380,000 on the modifications, but the harm didn't end there. On September 3, Lavelle sued Raw TV for breach of contract. The series production firm reached an out-of-court settlement in February. However, Parker and Lavelle didn't communicate again after a few months. Parker landed in the news once more. Albeit for a far less dramatic reason. On March 17, 2019, at about Trooper Michael Ingram stopped him at 2:15 p.m. on the Honus Highway near he had been using his 2018 Ford in Alaska. 64 miles per hour F-150 in a 55 zone between 4 and 9. He received a $60 penalty under citation number A for exceeding the limit. Typically, K1903275 would have gone unnoticed, but Parker didn't reply to the court warned him about the ticket on April 12, and he ultimately pled no contest on May 6. The story was picked up by TMJ on May 12, and it quickly gained traction. Parker could have paid the charge with pocket change from his gold pants, according to a joke in a widely shared tweet, but the fine wasn't the problem. It was the response that caused some supporters to start doubting his level of responsibility. When 2024 finally arrived, it was expected to be just another gold rush season, but instead it almost broke him during season 15 production. Parker experienced a string of mishaps. On June 12, there was a significant piece of equipment that drove him to the brink. The loss and possible gold recovery due to the Dominion Creek claim failure was just days after obtaining a permit, estimated at $2.3 million. Problems led to a 17-day outage, which cost an additional $1.50 by August 3. Parker's cash reserves had lost production and incurred millions in overhead. In a last-ditch effort, we were down to $78,000, hardly enough to sustain the business for a week. Pawned his 1957 Chevrolet Bear, which had belonged to his deceased grandfather and was among Parker's most valued acquisitions. When $115,000 was utilized to pay payroll, things became quite dire. That he called an urgent meeting with his colleagues on August 28 and provided them with the 3 important team members remained with the ability to leave without being penalized. Mitch Blaschke and others put in 2 weeks of unpaid labor to aid Parker's recuperation, and on September 7, they eventually accumulated 1,872 ounces of gold in a single week, a rich pay streak that was approximately $3.5 million, and it saved the whole operation, the majority of which was captured on camera. Although just brief periods, the entire incident was deemed too dramatic for the show to air, even though despite everything, Parker maintains a very high level of self-control. During season 14, his crew earned $24 million from mining operations, which are enormous. He apparently makes about $100,000 every episode on his own, which comes to Parker makes roughly $2 million a season, but he doesn't spend like someone who makes that much money. Claimed to have lived on a friend's couch in Los Angeles at one point and to not even possess a home outside of his mine site. Angeles, although according to other accounts, he owns a number of properties, including a house in one ad for Honus, Alaska, and a Yukon property detailed his Alaskan residence. Is a 2,000 square foot home featuring 2 bathrooms and 3